Gaurav, there has been, as everyone knows, mutual respect between the two leaders, regardless of what may be happening on the international front. However, this phone call, is this a reaffirmation in many ways of that strong bond between the two leaders still being intact?
Well, the US would want India to believe that. Americans have constantly been saying, even when US President Donald Trump was very critical of India, he always praised Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and that's because of the bond that the two share. The 75th birthday is a very important one, in our culture. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as he turns 75, US President Donald Trump took this opportunity to call him and greet him on his 75th birthday. It's a very major icebreaker between the two. Remember, very recently they had indicated that there would be a phone conversation. Just about an hour ago, I interviewed Ambassador John Bolton, former U.S. National Security Advisor. He was NSA to President Trump, was also U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, and he said to bring India-U.S. relations back on an even keel, there would have to be a conversation between the two heads of state and government, and within an hour, that phone conversation appears to have happened. So it is a positive sign. Things are going in the right direction after Trump tariff tyranny, has called it, through the relationship of Gair. But if you notice, Brandon Lynch is in India, the trade representative. They've had one round of precursor talks ahead of the trade talks, perhaps to discuss the framework for talks to move forward. So it is hoped that by fall, by November, there would be a trade deal in place. And if I may, trade was one aspect. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi had traveled to America in February, there was a conversation that the relationship would move forward on three legs. One was trade, the other was high-end technology cooperation, and third was defense. So defense, strategic relations, high-end technology cooperation, that was functioning fine. Only trade is an issue. If that is sorted out by October, November, then hopefully, if there are no more, air pockets in this relationship, the relationship could soar once again, Harshad.
Let me just go back to Geeta for more. Geeta, as I understand, this phone call obviously did last, for a while, and key aspects were touched upon. One, of course, is an aspect that you've already thrown light on, and that's the trade deal between the two nations. But going forward, as far as this trade deal is concerned, is it going to be when we talk about taking things forward, is there nothing more than the trade deal at the moment that matters more to the two nations? Or are we also, as Gaurav pointed out, looking at defense also being touched upon, or for that matter, exchange of knowledge, exchange of technology as well?
Well, absolutely. All these aspects are very important. It's for America to remember that we are strategic partners for a reason, that the technology transfer or defense cooperation between the two sides was not just in the realm of the impossible anymore, like it was many, many decades ago, that it was something that had fructified. And the Trump administration has to realize that there are various layers of conversation, engagement, and partnership between India and the United States of America. BTA is just one part, a very important, critical part, the bilateral trade agreement. But it's a very important part. Why? Because the trade, the way the two countries were conducting themselves no longer works for President Trump. So what works would be how the tariffs have to come down from the Indian side. Remember, there needed to be reforms on this side as well. So how tariffs would come down from the Indian side, how much would the climb down be, and what's the kind of tariff that will be imposed by America? It certainly cannot be 50% again. So they have to come to the talking table and resolve that. That is primary, first and foremost. Apart from that, the quad architecture, it's a security architecture, it's an economic architecture that provides a lot of base to the four countries to come together and work and counter the economic security that is required and was realized post COVID. How important that economic resilience and security is, particularly supply chain resilience to counter China. Now, if President Trump, and he certainly has not shown the importance the previous administration attached, or previous administrations attached to such grouping, particularly the Quad architecture. Then again, one will have to question whether if they are really serious about Indo-Pacific and security of the Indo-Pacific or not. But remember, Trump is engaging Xi Jinping. The US is engaging China, and they are also in conversation with Russia. The Russia bit might be good for us. The China bit, imagine if a China America deal concludes ahead of an India US deal, it could have far greater impact on India and an adverse impact than it would have a positive one. So, for India, first and foremost is a conclusion of the trade agreement between India and the United States of America. An early one, maybe early on, and then a larger, more detailed agreement a little later. However, they want to work this one out. They have to work this one out because this is a very important partnership. India invested too much in this into this relationship, and losing this would mean great deal of loss for India, given the kind of goods that go and the volume of goods that really go to America, the businessmen and business environment and climate quite not the way one would anticipate or would want it to be. And they are looking and watching very closely every move, every visit, every conversation, every meeting that is taking place between the two countries, because should the two countries not be able to resolve the tariff crisis, the trade crisis between the two countries, it is going to greatly impact those manufacturers who export their goods to America. And there are many such manufacturers in India.
Appreciate you joining us, Geeta, and sharing all those inputs with us. Let me also bring in Gaurav for his concluding thoughts. Gaurav, would it be premature for one to assume that things are headed in the right direction as far as the trade conversations are concerned, basis this phone call, or maybe it is actually the other way around? What are your thoughts?
So when I put this question to one of the diplomats sometime back, he said there is cautious optimism. That's the terminology that diplomats prefer to use right now when it comes to India-America, because a lot has changed from the January 20 inauguration of US President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's February visit to the United States, because that was the time that External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said that India is not worried about the Trump administration. India was actually very comfortable initially. And that's why Prime Minister Narendra Modi was quick off the block. He reached there in February. They signed the compact. They were hopeful that a trade deal would be done by fall. By July, we are told that papers were all on President Trump's desk at the Oval Office. And suddenly, when other countries in Europe and in Asia literally surrendered to Donald Trump, his attitude appears to have changed. But when India stood tall and stood firm, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi won, officially India did not react to all the barbs that came from America. But between the two countries, India stood very firm. No access to agriculture, no compromise with agriculture, dairy and fisheries, no compromising on India's red lines, and yet accommodating American interests and expecting America to accommodate our interests. So America realized that they require India, India has been the pivot to Asia, very crucial for Indo-Pacific. The pressure tactics didn't work. Things appear to be returning on an even keel, but it's not done till it's done.
Appreciate, Gaurav, you're joining us and giving us all the very latest on that, giving us more perspective into that phone call that just took place a short while back between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi.